to this episode of the Women's Show, and particularly at the end of the Women's Month. We've been busy, people have been strategizing around innovation and technology, and there have been a lot of other things that have happened in women's spaces. Women in Media had a meeting symposium to talk about different things, and so in the totality of the Women's Month, we've been busy. And so we took off time today to critically talk about, what key highlights were present for, the women's movement and, in advancing rights and all the other entities it entails in, empowering women of Uganda. But to help me have a conversation around what key highlights happened in the Women's Month, I have today on my panel Hellena Sakisa from Makerere University. I hope you still are. Yeah. And I also hope you're still in the running for ministerial duty.
No, I am not, but I'm a student representative.
It's good to see you today and have you on this panel.
Thank you.
And I hope you do run again.
No, I'm in my final year.
Oh, so you can't?
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And next to her is Naima Isa, Pan-African Muslim feminist.
As usual.
Lawyer. Welcome to the show. The Nubian Queen. Welcome to the show, Naima.
Honest to be back.
And not a new face, but has been lost on us, Miss Rebecca Juna Triatunga. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tricia.
And I also love the work that you were doing with the Twitter Spaces. I don't know why you stopped.
I have not stopped. So we have busy schedules. So we are trying to see that we do like once a month and host somebody that is very impactful, so that we are not just doing something as a routine, but rather having long life impact
So you can sustain the strategy. Okay.
Yeah, but also not to lose out on the community work that we are doing.
Got it.
Yeah.
Ladies, we've been through a lot of, and I hope from wherever you are, you've been doing some work within the Women's Month. Because there's a lot of activity happening in advocacy, in policy reform, in legislative reform. But to zone in on what key highlights stood out for you, most probably just to say what that means and where we are going from that point. And I'll begin with you, Helen, on especially around what you did in Makerere University, the work that, and I hope women, the gender study area had been doing some work in the Women's Month. But even though they weren't, what key highlights have stood out for you in the Women's Month?
First is the theme itself. This brings a very big highlight to us, the young generation, because we have been born in a era where there is technology, but this has posed a big question to us as the young women who are in these spaces of advocacy, who are in these spaces of impacting the other generation and standing for women's rights, on how best we can use this technology. So it has come to us to see how the digital movement is so important to we as the young generation, because we are born in the era where it is.
Interesting. And I love that perspective, because we're children born in tech.
Yes.
And when you look at that dynamic, a lot of times the problem then is the gap that it has also created. We were having a conversation previously, and someone was saying, in as much as tech has opened the conversation to digital revolution, it has also extended the gap, the divide between the last mile women, the last mile children, and the city center and the CBD children. How do we start then to bridge these disparities in our digital revolution as women in Uganda?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think I've been having the conversation, and like you said, the highlight of the month, digital innovation, technology for all, and all that. The conversations have been going on, but I think the biggest concern women have been having is on how far are we in embracing, the new era as women. And I'm not talking about the women in the urban setting or you and I who, can afford accessing smartphones and this old technology thing. And this stems back from, when it comes to education, who are being left behind, and then who is in place and position to embrace the new technology. Because technology is not you waking up and like, I can operate a smartphone. You have to understand the basics and all that. Then if we look at the women in the rural areas, are they in position to be able to adapt and embrace the new technology and innovation era, which to me I think we are far from it. And as women, I remember my organization was doing a training in Captura, training women in the villages on how to operate a smartphone, like the basics of it. I'm thinking that we need to make that step further, the government to be able to say, you know what, in as much as we are doing, UPE, can we have something similar to UPE in relation to women embracing technology? Are we having training centers in the villages for women to be able to understand how to run the simple gadgets like a smartphone? And this comes because I think there is a research we did as an organization still to highlight the disparity we have in tech for the male and the female, gender. And shockingly, 60% of women in Uganda cannot even afford smartphones. So you can imagine that's a huge number. And looking at the status that as a country, we heavily depend on agriculture and all that. We till land to boost our economy. And if you look at the biggest contributors of this are women.
Yes.
And if you look at the end product, in Bosoga, I think I was reading one of the reports we have in the organization. During farming and tilling the land, it's women contributing. When it comes to harvesting time, the men are like, you know what, this is my land. I need all the proceeds from the harvest. So then this affects women to be able to, say, from this harvest, let me put aside some amount of money to buy like a smartphone, be able to access the markets and all that, and market my produce. And this comes also from the different factors that affected women to contribute meaningfully in the economy of the country. This also being ownership of land. Many women do not own land in their own names because of culture and all that. If you look at the northern and eastern region, where land is owned customarily, you find that women do not have the right to even access these lands because you are married into a family. And if you're married into a family, you don't belong to that family. True. So you cannot own land in perpetuity for yourself. True. Now, that has affected them. And it also, we see this creeping in, even in the innovations and technology, that if women are left behind in those basic things, how sure are we that they will be able to be, taken with the flow to embrace technology, and how are they then going to contribute? Many tech people I've met hardly are women. They're men, the geeks.
And
the
so whatever they're
gurus,
building
for
for men.
Yeah,
for men.
men.
And it is them who are knowledgeable. I've tried so many times to just fix my mobile phone and go to a tech person. I've never met a woman tech to fix the basic, my microphone chip on the phone. It's always men. And this says a lot, because where are the women? Why are we not being, pointed to this direction? And
is it a question of socializing and how we were raised? Because hear me out, as far as 6 or 7, a lot of the things men did was figure out how to, do some mechanics with the radios, with what. Does our socializing have something to do with how we embrace these new technologies? Because today, if you're having a conversation on coding, children in China as little as 7, 8 do begin coding, girls and boys. And so it's that familiarization with the systems, with the coding, with the technology, that has made it easy for them as they grow up to actually have more women in tech. Is it possible that even our socializing contributes to the to the gap in having more women in that space?
Yeah, I don't think, but I believe so, because if you look at ourselves as a country, we are heavily reliable on our culture, and culture has gender roles, and gender roles, I'll refer to the Uganda culture, my Nubian culture. A woman, everything kitchen, you will be taught at such a tender age. A boy will be taught how to fix things and all that. So the socialization, they grow up knowing if there's a problem in the house, I fix it. I've been following, social media so much, and then when my man is in the house, I pretend like I don't know anything. When he's in the house, I can fix the bulb, I can do that. Why don't you fix the bulb when he's in the house? So the socialization that we have, where we think, if I fix things, I will be too much for the man and to not make me like wife material and all that. So it is kind of limiting women to explore. I'm not, because I can fix things with my
No, I
hand.
hear you.
But how many women are, encouraged to do that? Like, you know what,
Mhm.
you can fix,
Mhm.
you can assemble a chair, you can assemble a bed, you as a woman. Not so many. They pretend, even when they know, they'll pretend, because socially, as a woman, you're supposed to be weak, and let the man fix it. If you take charge, you're doing a man's role, which is not right. For apologies, I think I
It's
have a
okay.
call. So I think that also has made women lag behind in wanting, to participate in innovation. And the fact that also, like I say, things to do with farming, hard labor, taking care of the family, unpaid care work, that is for a woman. If a man does that, they're paid. So we're like, why should I fix, something? Spend much of my time learning how to do tech when there is a man who can do tech.
And I do hear you. Today I was having a conversation with some senior leader in an organization, and we were talking about chatbots. And she's like, you'll be very surprised how much you don't even need funding to
Yeah.
create a chat box. And the question, she was like, do you want to learn how to make one? I'm like, I'd be very interested. It feels so elusive. She's like, no, it's actually very easy and you might never need funding for it. But it's something we can do. And I hear you when you say that imagination of these things are elusive for women, even when we can get out of ourselves and actually do them. But let me bring Rebecca into this conversation. When you hear from Naima's submission in regards to the fact that the majority of women are in farming and gardening and tilling the land, I know for a fact that there are entities. Ifred has one. It's called the Cash It Up. There's also another one called Market to Garden app where that connects women to markets. And then there's the Agroduca. And so it looks like in innovating, a lot of people have begun to create platforms that, improve accessibility for produce. But notwithstanding, I know there are still men at the forefront of that. But for the women in these spaces, I hope that there is a way that they can leverage these technologies. But do you think that in a case in point, that's the next good step for the agriculture industry or even for women's access to markets in this dynamic?
Okay, thank you, Tricia. I do believe that it is the way to go. Technology is the new in thing, and women need to embrace it. But we cannot say just embrace without teaching women how to be able to use these gadgets. If you're talking to a woman in Shema that is in her garden right now, that has her millet produce, and she is able to send it to Kampala because there is lack of exposure, you don't expect her to just jump on it. So exposure that, hey guys, there is this, but also you need to know that mindset change is another thing. I've been used to this blocker that comes and says, give me your things, here is cash. But then, you're transacting here and there, and then mobile money has been deducted. There's still some challenges within the tech industry that need to be adjusted, especially to ensure that they bring on the women on board. Because a man will lose 5,000 and not see it as a lot of money.
True.
But a woman will lose 5,000 and she'll think, pampers, milk and all that. But nonetheless, we cannot view that more of the challenges, but also know that we either go with the flow or we are going to be left behind. And as the SDGs say, no leaving anyone behind. We have to put up strategies, awareness, creation mechanisms that can help women as far as village women, uneducated, educated, to be able to use these gadgets, but also making them cheap.
Because it's a question of accessibility first that we also need to address.
Make it cheap, because you're saying a smartphone has to be around 100,000 shillings. That's like a used one that is long lasting. And this woman makes that 100,000 shillings in a year. I'm looking at the grassroots woman, who is the majority. Can we have smartphones that are around 50,000, 30,000? I do believe that tech people can help us here, but also ensuring that the cybersecurity issue is addressed. You're not leaving somebody vulnerable and all their data is collected and it's exposing them. For example, if you have the bank apps on your phone, you're having mobile money, you see what is happening every day. You're thinking, how will this woman trust this technology to keep her safe? We are already in an unsafe space for women, just physical. How about using digital technologies, but also embracing equity, saying we want equality, but removing the hurdles that affect women. For example, most of the men will tell you, I will not buy my woman a smartphone. I have seen them cheat. I've seen nudes. So she might be chatting with another guy. So how do we ensure that the woman, despite the need to grow, does not also feel like they're being pulled down? But then also ensuring that the women in these spaces are highlighted, they're embraced, they're acknowledged. There are very few women in this technological world, and you wonder, but they're behind the doors. And surprisingly, we say that it is men's work, and you find it is women's work. The men take credit for women's work. So because they are the leaders, so they frame the system of how you're reporting and what you report, and you say, don't outshine your boss, you'll be chased. But could we go back as the women's movement and pick these women and, highlight them within our circles, give them few of these gigs that we tend to give to the men, because it's upon us to do the research of how many women do we have in technology, how many telecom engineers do we have, how many computer engineers do we have, all this little information. And there are women that don't have an office, but they're working from home in their homes, and they are using their laptops as IT personnel, being able to bring them into a center and say, this is the group of women and this is what they are doing. If there are opportunities for them to go and learn, front them, having a women's space for them to grow and be able to be accessible.
Interesting. And it reminded me of the distinction of women in tech and women building tech. Because a lot of times there are people behind, the back end doing the coding that you might necessarily never see, who build and deploy technologies, even without their faces being at the forefront of the technology. But also speaking to accessibility and invisibility. And that's where you help me. A lot of people go through university, and most of them, for the better part, that's their first time. They're really interrogating, using maybe the e-library and using these tools. Quite different now with the smartphones, but not necessarily true for everyone. But and I noticed it at campus because I did a lot of self-teaching before I got into campus on understanding how to use a computer and when. But imagine it was before campus. And so I'm imagining there are a lot of people that walk into campus that don't know how to use these tools. And some do graduate before they even learn how to touch type. Even as adults in offices, there are a lot of people who still, pick on the keyboards. How do we, and I don't know how we're going to phrase that advocacy point, but how do we advocate better to have something like IT not be so theory, but be inculcated in the holistic system of schooling, so that you at least furnish out graduates that understand how to use these technologies as they evolve.
I think that stems back to our curriculum, our education curriculum, because you see, we have been in a curriculum where we are taught theoretical things and not practical. Because the truth is, people at campus, many of the people, even some of my classmates, don't even know how to, fix a PC, tell them how to do a Word document, and when you really interrogate with them or talk to them, interact with them, and ask them, how come? People are very open and they tell you that the schools I went to, they didn't have the practical part of ICT. So this still goes back to the Ministry of Education. How best can the policy implementers or policy formulators in the Ministry of Education sit down and think how to draft a policy that inclusively brings students to embrace technology through ICT? Because me going to schools where I had the opportunity to operate a computer, I have not found difficulty in operating a computer at campus because I know, oh, this is how you can do it. This is how you can do it. But it is because I went to schools where where that was accessible. So, and I also asked one of my friends why in their schools they did not have the computer studies or the practical part of the computer. And some of them told me it is because they do not have completely the computers.
Interesting.
Wow. They do not have them completely, but they are studying ICT.
Interesting.
So it still goes back to also our type of leadership. Do we just have a leadership that is fronting, says of yes, we have done this, we have done that,
To tick boxes.
yes, but they have not implemented what they are sought to do.
I hear you.
Well, if I'm to add to what she says, because I hear what she's saying, and it's really sad that as a country we do not have a systematic education system. So we do have a lot of UPE schools, but these schools are not like well funded. You know, I understand, I acknowledge that they've changed the curriculum. There's this hands-on. Is it skills something curriculum that they're doing, which is a very, very good initiative. However, how practical is it? Like, you know, how practical is it going to be for the schools that are government funded, and for the fact that I think each student is funded like 15,000 a year, something like that. So how practical is this, and will they even be able to, you know, afford buying, you know, ICT equipment for these students? And also the fact that we don't have a system that regulates the number of mushrooming private schools that are coming, that are focusing on profit making and not the quality of education. I'm thinking we need to go back. Actually, I'm not thinking. I am suggesting that the government reconsiders licensing schools to operate. Privatization is a good thing, but for many, it is being looked at as profit-making business. You find that the same people in the government are owning so many schools privately. And you find that their schools are even, you know, making a lot of the students, not profits. They're very, very expensive, first of all. And then they're telling you, these are the schools that are performing. In the newspapers, you will see that these are the schools because they have a marketing team that is really pushing. And our parents and us, being people who are looking at academics, like results, and not the process and what skills the child is getting. It's about, is she getting 18.8? Is she getting 4? You're going to look at these schools. And it is leaving people who have the potential and skills in the rural areas who are really skilled in tech. Because I remember there's something I saw on social media of a young boy who built an arena out of mud.
Yes.
And from the look of things, he was a disadvantaged boy in a rural area. I don't think he had like the skills, but naturally he was skilled to have architectural skills. But now I'm thinking, where is his skills and dreams going to end? Is he going to stop at building it with mud? Growing up, we had boys who would like use wires to make those wire cars, and like a very posh Lamborghini car. Kids would design it with wires and rubber bands, and they're like, wow. So I'm thinking, where did these boys end? Did they end up, constructing and assembling cars, or they are somewhere in Chikubo doing business? And these are kids who would have, added to the economy of this country. Imagine if we had an assembling plant. So education is really key. And with the system that we have, UPE and USE, I think we are killing our education system slowly, and it's also reflecting on the kids going to the university. That's what
and I hear you on the critical role of education, but especially on skilling, because and post-COVID, a lot of the conversation that I was having was, can we have a post-COVID curriculum? Like, we can no longer do school as we used to do it.
True.
And so today, when the Minister of Education stands and says the things that children were writing, someone wrote, the stone the builder rejected. It's testament to the fact that this system is not working for me. But let's take it up at a notch when it comes to, because you hinted on cybersecurity. And it took recently, when I sat down to have a cybersecurity training, that actually I realized how fragile systems can be. And now, and a lot of times when this conversation happens, I've been having it in quite a privileged lens, but now I'm looking at it from the last mile woman, in the regard that it's even possible to have accessibility, but still be very cyberly fragile and be prone to attacks, to cyber attacks, to hacking, to fraud. How do we, beyond our ask for accessibility, and it's very mandatory really to push for accessibility, but beyond that, how do we then begin to have conversations around cybersecurity, cyber resilience, but then also safety for people that are using these systems and platforms online?
Thank you, Tricia. For me, I do believe we can start with what we have: media awareness, through radio, through social media, and through TV. Having just, even the capacity buildings that we have, trainings, having that little bit of session on cybersecurity. Having the technology companies, the telecom companies that are around, pushing it further, because they are the ones in charge of collecting most of our data. Who do we talk to? What is on our phones? So they are supposed to be at the forefront, but we cannot wait for them to make that decision because they are profit-making businesses.
Got it.
But the private sector is supposed to be at the forefront, because in Uganda, cybersecurity is mostly a private sector business. And where business is, profit is at the forefront. But as women, for me, I do believe if we had been able to have that group of women leaders that are in technology, that are in cybersecurity, and zone them out and said, hey, we have a group of women who would want you to meet. Funding or creating spaces where on TV they can go and speak about them, and reminding us, or even on having flyers on social media, on WhatsApp, and saying, hey guys, is this true? So that they correct what we are saying and what we are doing. The language is highly tech. So because my brother is into that world, there are things he says and you're like, what have you said? And you get it because you do not understand what it does. And he will tell you, do you have an antivirus on your phone? Do you have an anti-malware on your phone? You're like, but I've just put the other on. What is this? What's the difference? But being able to be around people like that and, listen to it and then pass it on to another woman and say, for me, last time, this is what I had, and they said it works for me. And removing apps from our phone that just collect data that we are not using. Looking at the Wi-Fi that we are connecting to, how secure is it? Most of us, because it's free, and women, we love free Uganda things. And then you connect, and the next thing you're like, you can't access your Twitter account. Understanding those little basics, that Wi-Fi can be dangerous, and you need to know that it's secure. You also need to know that your phone is secure. You have to have at least a password. Your Gmail account is secure. Once in a while, change your passwords. Change your security question, for Pete's sake. It's the same you had in 1900 up to now. Change, if you've changed gadgets, go back to the app and log out the different gadgets that you had. If you've lost your phone, can you log into a different phone quickly, replace your SIM card quickly? But then also that goes back to if you've lost your national ID and you have to replace the SIM card quickly and get that notification. Basically, the little bitty tiny things that we take for granted. Having a strong character password. You find somebody's password is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
You'll be hacked.
That is even our mobile money passwords. You find the person is 000. So when the person tries, somebody steals your phone and they do try, it's quicker for them. But if it has a caps lock, a lowercase, a different feel, by the time you get to, at least you get a notification that somebody is trying to access your account. But there are those that are high level security, and that brings us the issue of women and peace and security, and how safe are women, human rights defenders, peace builders. where you find that now it's state accessing your gadgets and you have no clue, but they know who you're talking to, they know who your emails are going to, and that would need us to have a bigger conversation. How do you ensure that you're not having spyware on your phone? Yeah, and it's not affecting your life, because now the woman lives in fear. Despite, apart from patriarchy, you also have this security thing that comes in. So it's a broader picture. It has to have private sector, government, and CSOs working together. Yeah.
And I love that you say that, because then it makes this big thing turn into a power center.
Yeah.
And so power from the people that actually create this technology
Yeah.
to the people that moderate the use of these technologies, to the state, to the men, the patriarchy that you speak about. It's quite interesting on how power dynamics actually do play out also in this space. But to then move to where we are going, because I need us to start to lens in into the future. When you look at our curricula and how it looks today, and the focus that we still have on the history, how do we, transition it? And it could be something as easy as, let's just overhaul the system. But how do we transition out of, doing a lot of the education that doesn't speak to us in the now, and then regurgitate a lot of the history that is even not ours? How do we reframe our curricula to position it to be a critical tool in technology advancement for women and girls?
I think one of the things I think would really be considered is the fact that the stakeholders who are the pupils, students themselves, have also to be put on the table.
Yeah.
To be
have their say.
yes, to hear what they have to say about this digital technology, this digital awareness, and how it would be helpful to them, first as individuals, and second as a generation. And then second would go to the teachers or schools, teachers or schools, and how the teachers or schools would help the pupils, students, dive into the digital technology advancement. And the third would be the government, the Ministry of Education, on how best they would help the pupils, the students, the teachers, and the schools on how best they can really dive into and create an inclusive approach that caters for all these major stakeholders into advancing into digital technology.
Interesting. Maybe also on that part, Naima, us in the now, in the work environment, I think a lot of the critical issue that we've been grappling with is misinformation and disinformation, and how it has perpetuated and way past from COVID. And I really feel like that was a height of a lot of misinformation and disinformation into different circumstances within the epoch that we stay in. And unfortunately, it is me, people you would imagine would have a critical eye to say, oh, this is a deep fake, or this is misinformation, this wasn't said. How do we come to a place where we can fact check our very selves, verify before we share? So that we reduce on this curtail of misinformation, because I think it's becoming a pandemic.
Yes, it is. Well, I think as Ugandans we have lack of a better word, a lot of village excitement. When you get information, because we are not creatives.
True.
We have been conditioned, I think, right from our education. We do copy and paste. So for many people, when it comes to content creation, being creative, and content creation to get followers, they think it's about let's copy what someone in the US is doing. I was discussing this with someone very close to me, and he was like, content creators in Uganda are like all fake. Like we copy content. There's no one who's a creative. And I was looking at I'm always on TikTok. That's where I
Yeah,
get most of the
yeah,
information. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Even Kenyans are creative more than we are. Or like, what's the problem?
Yeah.
And like when she was saying with the education system, we should look at the status now. We have more job seekers than creators. And what that does mean, does that mean? It means right from our nursery, the way we are taught, it's I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer. So you find so many doctors and lawyers who have nowhere to go. And the fact that even with impunity and corruption, we do not have jobs that are created. People who are there 70, 80 years old do not want to let go of positions.
They're not going anywhere.
Even when the retirement age is there, no one wants to move. Why? Because of grade. We've seen the Iron Sheet saga and all that. So for as long as we still have that in the system, and for as long as Ugandans are so desperate to want to be out there, to look like the people who have the novel information, and don't fact check.
The breaking news team.
I have a group that I'm on social media, and you know, in groups I don't comment. I never post anything unless I am 100% sure, because myself, I do not want to be looked at a person who sends the wrong information, and I don't want to be looked at the person who she wants to get the likes, to be the one like you said, news breaking person. I don't want. I need to be sure that the information I'm sharing is really right, and I think that's why it has made me so passive in many groups. I'll be there. Observer committee, I always observe, and I'm like, what you posted is wrong. Fact check. So as Ugandans, like I said, we have village excitement. If we see news, we want to be the first ones who, like a person who sends in the the news, and then you don't realize that you could be hurting someone, and this could be a woman, because mainly when false information is being spread, it's mainly to affect a woman.
Yes.
And then what baffles me most times is the fact that it's even women who are spreading this, fellow women, because probably I have beef with Trish. I want to prove to her that, I can destroy her. Then if there's any rumor that you've not even fact found, you start sharing. Guys, can you believe news? And then you're like, by the time this has been corrected, the damage that has been caused
left behind
is irreparable. So I think as women, I always say that we need to be each other's keeper. We need to be the lesu handler of the other. And the Swahili culture that I'm partly define me, a lesu is very important. It is a symbol of protection, a symbol of support, and a symbol of telling, the other person, I've got your back. In case of anything, I'll protect you. So we need to have that. It's not Ubuntu per se, but let's be the leso handlers, the kanga handlers. Let's be there to protect and shield any attacks that are coming to our fellow sisters before we remove the kanga and then they get the attack right. So fact checking is very important, because you do not know the damage you're going to cause. I think before we share anything, as individuals, women, the feminists may speaking, we need to think of, if this information was about me, would I be happy about it? Would I be in position to defend myself about this? Is it something that I want people to know about me? If it is in the negative, then do not share. If it's in the affirmative, share. Someone always tells me, critique the person in private and praise them in public. That helps a lot on the amount of damage that you're going to cause on the person. So fact checking, that will, do away with the misinformation that we get. I'm sorry, I'm going to bring this bill, the bill that has been passed, the controversial homosexual bill. When it passed, do you know how many, this person was arrested, mob justice on this one because they were gay, and even information that was not true. There was a video of someone being caned, tied on a pole, which is a Nigerian incident of 2019, and someone is saying an homosexual person was found in Kasese and being punished. That is misinformation. So we are very quick to say, you know what, I am the novel news person, but we do not know how much damage we are causing
behind.
And I think this also led to us.
But let's now immediately, licensing mob justice.
Yes,
that's
and
true.
So we need to be really, really careful, especially the women. I'm emphasizing this because we have a poor hearts Down syndrome women. We think if I share information about Isa, by the time she comes and saying, that's not right, the damage has already been caused.
True.
Your integrity has been questioned. You as a person, you people are looking at you with weird side eye, like how could she? So by the time it comes out as it's not true, the damage has been caused, and many people do not want to know the truth. They want to take what they've
What they
had first
had.
as the truth. So, like you say, and so when you are misinformed, you're disinformed because you will not know the truth.
Yes.
So, my biggest cry to the people is always fact check and see if what you're going to share is true. It's not about the likes that you want, but it's about the information that you pass out. Is it the true information, or you're just doing it for the likes? And for those who are doing it for the likes, try, please, I beg, be creative. Yeah, we are tired.
So verify before sharing. Let's go to the question that I asked. When Naima talked about being the kanga carrier or the leso carrier, it reminded me of a question I've asked most of my guests that are new on the show on collaboration and how women, beyond women in tech, how women in a general, especially the women's movement, can then start to collaborate together and strategize for the future.
Well, thank you, Tricia. One, before we even talk about collaboration, we need to understand that women are their own persons with different goals and different ambitions. So they're bound to conflict. And for us to collaborate, we need to understand that we all bring something different to the table and have different aspirations. And we will have a few fights here. And our strength is in how we will resolve those fights as women. We cannot say that we are perfect. And that's the other thing that doesn't sit well with me, of holding women to a very high moral standard. Compared, yes, we are human beings with different backgrounds, with different upbringing, with different influences. So, and that's the beautiful thing about us. And that's the power within us that we can use to collaborate. There's beauty in collaboration. I don't know if you've seen how women circles in the villages buy things, where how when they come together to do certain things, they educate their children, they stand with each other. So in showing them that yes, there is conflict and it's going to arise. It's in how you handle it. And on the other hand, there is also this beauty of working together, of you bringing different brains together. If Trish is good at something and I'm not good at it, I can borrow her knowledge. She can be my my foundation at that moment. And if I know something that she doesn't know, I can be her help. So there is power in collaboration if we understand that we are different people, we bring different things to the table. And we can achieve a lot if we come together as women. Most of the times you will ask men and they will tell you, you ask a woman when she's in trouble where she goes for the money. She'll always come to us. But if we have, I've seen village women have their circles. When their child is just away from school, she's not going to the men. She's going to those women's circle and they are supporting her. And maybe that's something we can borrow. But even within the collaboration, we have to remove the judgment part for women to understand that she's, a whole being that is bound to make mistakes, that is bound to want to be creative, and support her in her adventure, and not build collaborations that are like patriarchal systems. Untangling the beliefs that we have seen here and say, let's create our own space that doesn't have those leaders that don't want to go off power, those leaders that want things done their way, and have leaders that listen to the women and advance gender equality in a way the women feel it's fit for them, because you have to allow the women, take the lead. But also, I think you see the CSW, how women come together, and it's a beautiful thing. If we are even to talk about tech, imagine if we had like a consortium of women in tech. And we can always go to them and say, I have this problem, whom can I call? Let's talk about women in construction. How many are there? What are the building codes? You want to build your house, but the men are cheating you. To go to this woman and say, which hardware has, the cheap, materials.
And it's owned by a woman.
Women in business. The Casita group has a women's corner. And those women support each other. They pull each other and say, you know what, there is this, a show, you come and we market our things. And I would want to see it more in the women NGO world, in the women in media, doing their own little things. But we all have to understand that we are different talented people, and not to fear, oh, she's, she's growing, she's outshining me, and knowing that we have different things to bring to the table and we shine brighter with one another.
That's interesting. Yeah. And then as we wind down, because this is where we're going, like in your own ways, where do we go past the Women's Month? What would you want to stay? And it may not be just specific to technology, but to where you want us to evolve towards women and the women's movement.
You say the statement of collaborative.
Yeah.
There's something I have been thinking about, and I was like, how good would it be if we women in leadership, women in tech, women in business, redefined the women's movement?
Oh, that's interesting.
That would be nice.
Because I have had very many interactions with my peers at university, and most of them say, Hellena, I would not want to identify with the women's movement because of I saw this other person's clash with this one on media. I saw this other woman clash this one. It also goes back to other women who are in those positions showing a good example to the we who are coming up. And that's why
older women, showing a good example to the younger women.
Yes, and that's why I would really want the women's movement, the NGOs, to redefine and to concentrate and redefine the women's movement, because we are losing it out. And through the redefining the women's movement, we shall prioritize what are the challenges girls, women are facing.
Interesting. And perhaps it might be that we'll shift officially to the feminist movement. It could be the solution. Yeah. Naima, where do we go beyond the Women's Month? How do we build better as a women's movement?
Well, I think this is my own perception. March was named after women marching, or women targeted the month of March so that they can march and ensure that we got the freedoms that we got as women. And to me, the women's rights and women's issues live with us every day. The fact that we were born women. And whatever we have emphasized, highlighted, discussed in this month needs to continue discussing. I remember, people trying to attack me on social media. There's someone who wrote, women's rights again. This again, it never ends. No, it will not end. For as fact as much as women are still born and we still exist in this world, the fact that we're still giving birth to kids, women issues are going to still stand.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? We need to forge a way forward, learn from our past mistakes, and do better. Specifically considering, the theme this year, to me, I thought it was really timely because most times we talk about equality, equity, but we don't go in depth to understand which different, plays do we have that are putting women, step back or be behind the male counterparts. And the fact that we've even highlighted the issues about technology and innovation that we did not know in our country that exists, that, are barring women from advancing. And this being highlighted, then how do we move forward? Like, I was having a conversation with a couple of men, in a radio show, and was saying the government needs to include women on issues. You coming up and saying a free internet on Kampala Road at 3 a.m. with the security issues that we have that affect women, if women are being raped and defiled during that day, what do you expect will happen to them at 3 a.m. along Kampala streets? And even them being there with people have been socializing women at night, are doing prostitution or transactional sex or all that. How then do we include women and reconsider the things that we think are for women? Are the women discussing these things, or people are discussing it for the women? We need to rethink how we include women significantly and meaningfully in things that will affect decisions that will affect them socially, politically, and economically. Yeah, that's I think that's all.
That's interesting. Rethink how we include women. Juna, how do we move forward past the Women's Month?
Past the Women's Month, my call to action is for the women leaders in Parliament. They are the voice of the women, especially women that are on the affirmative action seats. Where are we?
They are there, like you said.
Yes, they are there. And we
don't
we,
see
But
we,
them.
we
where are
need
they?
where are
Yeah.
you? Yes, you are there, but where are you in terms of what impact do you have?
Yeah.
True.
You get it. You're the voice. You're the one supposed to be saying, "Hey guys, the women in cybersecurity, bringing it on the floor of parliament, creating awareness. This is your role
Yeah.
to build on the momentum of the past women. Have we failed them and their work? Because we do have the numbers, but can we look at the quality of women we are putting in parliament? We are putting in leadership positions. Do they speak to the women's agenda?
Yeah.
And not just, I like Rebecca, I like her. No, to even when I don't like you, I know that you're a woman and I know that the work you're doing is good work and it needs to be highlighted. Or the issues you're bringing on table are the real issues that are affecting the woman. And to go back and say, hey, because the Winnie Byanyimas, the Miriam Matembes are the ones that told the president and parliament, this is not what women want.
Yeah.
And when women speak, the men listen. Quite often we've said patriarchy and men, don't listen. But when women put up a good fight, understand, the men listen.
Yeah.
How are we not having the women in parliament calling the men to listen?
With all the number of them.
Where is Uopa? We don't just want to see a fashionable statement of women. We want to see women that care about women and young girls and have an intergenerational lens that we are sitting on the table because our grandmothers would sit with us and our mothers.
Yes.
There are things that I learned from my grandmother. But we don't have that again here.
Yeah.
We are very distant from one another. So can we have an intergenerational decision making? Can we have women rise up? Because you're not in that chair to just sit and occupy. You are supposed to make impact. Can we have back the media?
Yeah.
We can't let the media go because they are the voice.
Yeah.
Can we document the work that women are doing, acknowledge them for their work, and tell women not to be serving tea to men in conference tables? You're an MP and you're serving a fellow MP.
And this is a meeting where they invited you as a delegate.
It saddens us.
And you're attending to the man's needs before you attend to your own constitutional needs of young girls. Teenage pregnancies are happening. But also, if we are to talk about the Karamoja scandal, you very well know that girls in Karamoja would need those iron sheets. It's okay to make a mistake. Pick up and take them back to Karamoja. Equity starts with us, the women that ask for equality. And we cannot be the ones messing up and asking for, what is ours.
The number of MPs that took iron sheets is quite overwhelming.
Yes.
And we're women.
And then we look at the PDM that is coming, the Emyoga. Where are the women? Where are the change stories? How are you highlighting these change stories so that they attract other women to join? If we are in discussion tables, are we using English or the local language? Speak the language that the woman understands. If you're using vulgar language, there are women that will not come. Do not eliminate women because they're in Mothers Union. We cannot say that we're going to eliminate them because they're Mothers Union. These are Muslim women. No, we have to say we are a holistic team and together collaborating together with our differences have bigger impact and have to be intentional about having young women on board.
Interesting. And when you think about redefining the women's movement, and you think about having the women's voices on the decision-making tables, but critically also having representation that matters, I think it's the beginning of a conversation on what women want, what the women's agenda really is. One of my advocacy points this year is we need a women's compact that says these are the 10 or 7 issues that we want to highlight going forward. And whoever is speaking for women, we will definitely speak to these and then some more. I hope as we go and from wherever you are, because I know people really do the work. So I hope as you continue doing the work, you really think on what a compact would look like. I'm still trying to understand it in framing. What we keep saying women's agenda, but what is it? Do we have a compact that speaks to what our agenda is? So thank you for joining me for this conversation. It's always a delight to have you.
We are honored.
Do come back.
Thank you for
Thank you.
having us.
Do come back. And from us here, I hope when you sit down and find a woman in your community, you imagine that there are challenges she faces that you could be able to help address. It could be as easy as advocating or agitating for safe water. It could be sanitary towels. The issues of women continue on a daily basis, and we continue to advocate on that front. I've been your host, Tricia, Gloria, and Nabaye, and thank you for joining us for this episode of the Women's Show. See you next time. Bye.